They burst into laughter the moment she stepped through the doors in that simple tracksuit. 14 seconds later, silence swallowed the room. Their smirks wiped clean by the storm she unleashed. If you love interesting stories like this that expose the truth, please give this video a thumbs up and tell us in the comments section where in the world you are watching this video, and also do well to smash that subscribe button. Nobody gave Sarah Martinez a second look when she stepped into Iron Wolf Academy in Phoenix, Arizona. To everyone in that sweat-soaked room, she looked like any other soccer mom who took a wrong turn. She wore a simple black tracksuit. No fancy logos, no designer labels, just clean and practical. Underneath, a basic blue t-shirt peeked out. Nothing special. Nothing that screamed fighter. It was a Tuesday night. The mats were hot, fans roared overhead, and the thick smell of sweat and cleaning spray filled the air. All around her, pairs of warriors in white GIs battled like their lives depended on it. Bodies slammed against mats. Grunts echoed through the room. Bursts of laughter cut through the tension. This was a place where you had to earn every inch of respect. A place where weakness got crushed. At least, that's what they all believed. "Whose mom is that?" Someone whispered loud enough for half the room to hear. Sarah heard every word. But she didn't flinch. She didn't even blink. She just sat down on the bench against the wall, unzipping her gym bag like she'd done this dance 1,000 times before. The front desk kid, Marcus, maybe 24 with pizza face scars, shuffled over with a clipboard. No smile. No welcome. Just business. "First time here?" he asked, not even looking up. "Not exactly," Sarah replied softly. He didn't ask what that meant. Didn't care enough to find out. Across the mat, Coach Williams was drilling guard techniques with the blue belts. A thick, bald man with a voice like broken glass and a whistle he never used. He glanced over when Sarah walked in, but said nothing. In his mind, she'd probably quit after 1 week like most beginners. Sarah sat and waited, perfectly calm, perfectly still. Her hands rested light on her knees, her breathing slow and steady. She watched everything, like she was trying to remember the rhythm of something she once knew by heart. One of the loudmouths, Tyler, made sure everyone could hear him. "Hey, that blue shirt's about to get folded like a cheap tent." Laughter erupted across the room. Sarah heard it all. She just looked down, slipped off her shoes, and stepped barefoot onto the mat. No big entrance. No announcement. She just bowed to the space with quiet grace that nobody seemed to notice. A young woman named Jessica, probably early 20s, leaned over to Tyler and whispered, "She looks like she's never even fought before." Tyler smirked. "Yeah, well, let's hope she stretches good so we don't have to call an ambulance." That got an even bigger laugh. Coach Williams said nothing, just kept drilling. But here's the thing about Sarah. She wasn't bothered. Not by the jokes. Not by the stares. Not by the coach who barely knew she existed. She'd been in rooms like this before, where your worth had to be proven over and over again, just because of how you looked when you walked in. When warm-up started, she moved with deadly precision. Not flashy, just sharp. Her hip movements were perfect. Her crawling drills had perfect rhythm. Her bridges were strong and controlled. A couple of white belts started to notice. One of them, a guy named Alex, whispered to his partner, "She's moving better than me, and I've been here 6 months." But Tyler wasn't watching. He was too busy showing off his new knee brace, bragging about how he almost got his brown belt taken away at a tournament for cranking a submission too hard. Sarah finished warm-ups and sat in a crouch by the wall. She tied her pants drawstring like she'd done it 10,000 times before. Then she waited. She wasn't in a hurry. She wasn't trying to prove anything to anyone. She was just ready. But nobody in that room had any clue what kind of storm was about to hit them. The hidden past. 12 years ago, Sarah stood barefoot on burning concrete in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. Sweat poured down her face. Her fingers were raw from hours of drilling chokes. She was 26, freshly divorced, carrying the weight of silence she couldn't put into words. Her twin boys were back home with her sister in Denver. That gym, an outdoor academy with cracked walls and a leaking tin roof, was where she went to learn how to breathe again. She hadn't planned on staying more than a few months. But when Master Santos watched her roll on her third day and said, "You have the spirit," she stayed. They trained 6 days a week. Mornings started before sunrise. No air conditioning. No mercy. She swept through the basics like her body already knew them. But it was the small things that changed her forever. The calloused feet of women who had nothing. The sound of bodies hitting mats during takedown drills. The way nobody cared where she came from, only how she fought. Back then, Sarah wasn't trying to be great. She was trying to survive her own demons. She didn't post videos online. Didn't brag to anyone. She just kept showing up day after day. Until the bruises stopped hurting and the dark thoughts stopped chasing her. Her GI was always plain. Her belt got worn from use, not for show. When she finally earned her purple belt, Master Santos didn't give a speech. He just nodded once and said, "Earned." She smiled, but barely. She was learning to carry power without making noise. Eventually, life dragged her back home. Her sister had a heart attack. The boys were older, and real-world problems like school supplies and electric bills became her new opponents. She packed up, folded her belt, and put martial arts on the shelf. For years it stayed there. Until recently, one night after a long shift at the insurance office, she found herself watching an old match from Brazil on her laptop. The video was grainy and half-muted, but there she was, her younger self, chaining techniques like a deadly machine. She watched it twice. Then again, when her son Diego walked in and asked, "Mom, is that you?" She just nodded. "Damn, you were kind of a beast," he said. She smiled and closed the laptop. "I was all right." That night, she couldn't sleep. Something in her chest was awake again. Not loud, not pushy, just a quiet drumbeat that wouldn't stop. She didn't tell anyone about signing up for Iron Wolf Academy. Didn't post about it online. She just called the gym, asked about trial classes, and picked the soonest Tuesday. She didn't tell them about Brazil, or Master Santos, or the medals packed away in a shoebox under her bed. She didn't need to. What they didn't know about her wasn't for them. It was for her. She wasn't coming to be seen. She was coming to remember who she really was. So when Tyler made his little joke about cheap tents, Sarah just breathed. She'd heard worse from bigger mouths. But disrespect has a way of waking up the parts of you that never really went to sleep. The test begins. Coach Williams split the group for drills. White belts on one side, colored belts on the other. Sarah got sent with the beginners. Tyler caught that right away. "Look at that," he said loud enough for half the room to hear. "They're giving her kiddie class. Should have brought some crayons too." Someone laughed. Not because it was funny, but because nobody wanted to be the one not laughing along. Sarah didn't look over. She just paired up with a nervous-looking teenager named Kevin, who would tape around every finger and eyes that asked permission before every move. "You want to go first?" Kevin asked, shifting from foot to foot. "You lead," Sarah said, calm as still water. They drilled basic sweeps. Kevin was clumsy but teachable. He kept saying sorry every time he bumped her or lost balance. "You're fine," Sarah told him, fixing his posture mid-movement. "You're actually close. Just lock your elbow tighter and twist your hips more. Like this." She showed him slowly and smoothly. Kevin blinked. "Wait, you've done this before?" "A little," she said. Meanwhile, Tyler was rolling with a blue belt named Devin, a short, stocky guy with fast hands and an obvious limp. Tyler kept laughing, making a big show every time he got a good position. Coach called for partner switches. Sarah ended up with a man in his 50s named Frank who smelled like mint and wore a brand new white belt still creased from the package. "You got any injuries I should know about?" Sarah asked politely. "Just my pride, but I think that's already hanging by a thread," Frank replied. She smiled. "A real one." They ran through more drills. Sarah stayed focused and steady. She didn't try to show off, but it was obvious to anyone really looking. Her balance was too solid. Her movements too clean. Her timing too perfect. After one transition, Coach Williams stopped and raised an eyebrow. "You said you were new to this gym," he said, watching her closely. "I am. Where'd you train before?" Sarah shrugged. "Different places." He looked like he wanted to press for more, but didn't. Instead, he moved on to check someone else's technique across the room. Tyler, sitting against the wall drinking from a giant neon water bottle, saw the whole exchange. "She's hiding something," he whispered to Jessica. "Bet she used to do cardio kickboxing classes and thinks she's a killer now." Jessica didn't respond. She was watching Sarah. Her expression was impossible to read. By the time sparring was announced, you could feel electricity in the air. Coach let the class pair up freely for open mat. Tyler stood up immediately and clapped his hands together. "Yo, Sarah, right? Want to roll?" All eyes turned. He wore a brown belt that was half faded and fraying at the edges, tied tight like it meant more than it actually did. Sarah stood slowly, brushing a wrinkle from her t-shirt. "Sure." She walked over like she had nowhere better to be. No trash talk. No extra energy. Just present in the moment. Tyler grinned and gave an exaggerated bow, mocking the tradition. "I'll try not to break you," he said, laughing at his own joke. Sarah didn't say a word. She just bowed back properly and settled into position. The gym fell into a heavy hush. Even Coach Williams paused mid-sentence. Because sometimes people pretend not to care until silence demands they pay attention. The storm breaks. Sarah crouched low, knees bent, fingers brushing the mat. Her breathing never changed. No deep breath. No adrenaline rush. Just smooth, settled calm, like she was about to make coffee. Not face down a cocky brown belt in front of a half-mocking crowd. Tyler, meanwhile, bounced on his toes like a kid showing off at recess. He smirked at everyone watching. "Let's see if yoga helps her here," he called out. Someone near the back let out a quiet laugh. Jessica didn't. Neither did Coach Williams. Kevin and Frank stood by the wall, eyes locked on Sarah like something serious was about to happen. But nobody could explain exactly what. "Ready?" Tyler called, already reaching out to slap hands and bump fists. Sarah nodded. They touched hands. That was it. For half a second, everything froze. Then Sarah moved first. Not rushed. Not loud. Just clean and perfect. She pulled guard, catching Tyler completely off balance. His cocky smile cracked. She shifted her hips like she was folding paper. His base collapsed. His knee slipped. The gym was still talking. A few people still chuckling like it was some beginner's luck. But Coach Williams squinted hard. He saw what was really happening. In that split second, Sarah's right leg slid up across Tyler's shoulder. The angle was absolutely perfect. Her left leg snapped over, locking behind her own ankle. Just like that, she had him. A perfect triangle choke. Deep, tight, no escape possible. Tyler thrashed once, tried to muscle his way out. Too late. Sarah adjusted by just a hair. Barely a shift in her hips, and squeezed. He tapped. 14 seconds. Not a wild, desperate tap. Just a quiet, stunned pat on the mat. 3 times. Sarah released immediately. No grin. No flexing. She sat back, legs crossed, and nodded once. Not at him, but at the moment itself. She stood calm and walked back to the wall. Her shirt stuck slightly to her back from the heat. She didn't look for applause, didn't scan the room for reactions. She just picked up her towel, wiped her face, and sipped water from an old steel bottle. The mat was dead silent. Tyler lay there, blinking up at the ceiling like it had personally betrayed him. Jessica stared with her jaw halfway open. Even Kevin turned to Frank with wide eyes like, "Did we just witness that?" Coach Williams finally spoke. It was quiet, but everyone heard every word. That wasn't luck. Tyler sat up, his face red. Not from embarrassment, but from how deep that choke had been. He didn't say a word. Couldn't find any. Sarah sat back down, legs stretched out in front of her. She tied her hair into a loose ponytail. No expression on her face. Just peace. "Yo," Alex said quietly from the other end of the bench. "That was the cleanest triangle I've ever seen in real life." Frank chuckled. "Told you she was something special." Nobody laughed this time. When silence shifts to respect, you know something real just happened. Coach Williams looked across the room, arms folded. His usual bark was completely gone. He said nothing, just nodded once and signaled the next pair to roll. But you could feel it in the air. Everyone was thinking the same thing. Who the hell is she? The truth comes out. Tyler was still on the mat, rubbing the side of his neck. He avoided eye contact as he stood and walked toward the far wall. Jessica opened her mouth like she was going to say something to him, then didn't. Sarah didn't gloat. She didn't even look at him. She had already moved on to what came next. "Keep it moving," Coach called out. Sarah stood and stretched her arms, slow and controlled. She didn't volunteer for another match, but she didn't hide either. She just waited, present and open. A few of the more serious students noticed how perfectly still she was. Not stiff, not nervous, just completely composed. This time, Alex stepped forward. "You want to go?" he asked, voice low and respectful. "Sure," she said. They shook hands, slapped, bumped fists. This match lasted a little longer. Alex came in sharp, young, fast, athletic. He tried to push the pace early, but Sarah slowed him down with calculated grips and calm, technical guard work. No panic, no wasted movement. She swept him once, past his guard, then gave him space to recover. She didn't roll like she had something to prove. She rolled like someone who knew exactly who she was. Coach was watching every second now. His eyes were locked in. So were Jessica's. Kevin leaned against the wall, arms crossed, whispering to Frank, "She's on a completely different level." Alex tapped after about 90 seconds. Armbar, clean and controlled. She helped him up, patted his shoulder, and sat back down. Then Jessica stepped forward. "My turn," she said. Sarah stood without hesitation. Same calm rhythm. They rolled. Jessica was sharp and tough. Strong base, smart angles. She pushed harder, tried to isolate Sarah's wrist, went for a quick arm drag. Sarah defended perfectly, countered with a simple collar grip, slowed the pace, then passed Jessica's guard like it was made of air. She controlled the back, applied a rear naked choke. Tap, clean and controlled, just like the others. Jessica sat up after and looked Sarah straight in the eyes. "You've been doing this a long time," she said. Sarah finally spoke more than a few words. "Yeah," she said quietly. "I have." Coach Williams walked over as they finished. His usual stiffness was completely gone. He stood over her, not sure what to say. "You said you were new to this gym," he said again. Sarah nodded. He let a beat pass. "Where'd you train before?" "Brazil," she said simply. "Rio de Janeiro." The room went completely still again. Someone at the back muttered, "Wait, Brazil?" Coach tilted his head. How long were you there? For years. The silence stretched like a held breath. Alex blinked. Are you a black belt? Sarah hesitated, then exhaled slowly. I am. I just don't wear it anymore. Nobody laughed. Nobody spoke. Even Tyler, sitting by the wall, stared at her like he was finally seeing her for the first time in his life. Coach just nodded slowly. You should have said something when you walked in. I didn't come here for that, she said. I just wanted to train. That's it. No speech. No story. Just pure truth. Sometimes the strongest thing you can do is show up without needing to explain a damn thing to anyone. Respect earned. Nobody said much after that. The energy in the room had completely shifted. Not in a loud, dramatic way, but in that quiet, careful way people get when they realize they've totally misread someone. A couple of the regulars offered Sarah soft nods as they passed by. Not forced. Not out of guilt. Just respect. The kind that doesn't need words. Tyler still hadn't rolled again. He sat off to the side with his back against the wall, drinking water and avoiding everyone's eyes. His brown belt looked a little less important now, like it had been stripped away by silence rather than by hand. Coach called time. All right, bring it in. The group gathered near the edge of the mat, sweat dripping, hands on hips, breathing hard. Sarah stood slightly apart, not trying to blend in, not trying to stand out. Coach looked around the room, then back at her. Some of you have been here a long time, he said. You know how I feel about rank and about proving yourself through time, not through noise. He paused, letting that sink in. But tonight, you all got reminded that skill doesn't always wear a stripe on its belt. A few heads turned toward Sarah. Coach kept going. Sarah's been around this game longer than most of us in here. That doesn't mean we put her on some pedestal, but it does mean we pay attention when someone like that steps on our mat. Nobody argued. Nobody rolled their eyes. Even Tyler looked down at his hands. Jessica raised her hand. Can she teach a class sometime? The room laughed a little, but it wasn't sarcastic this time. It was hopeful. Genuine. Coach smiled for the first time all night. We'll definitely talk about that. People started packing up their gear. Kevin walked over shyly, rubbing the back of his neck. Sorry for being so awkward earlier, he said. You did fine, Sarah replied. You've got good instincts. Trust them more. Thanks. You really choked that guy out in 14 seconds, huh? Sarah grinned just a little. I wasn't counting. Kevin laughed and walked off, shaking his head in amazement. Sarah grabbed her bag, slid her sandals back on, and stepped off the mat without another word. She passed Tyler on the way out. He stood up awkwardly, still flushed. Hey, he said, stopping her. She turned around. He cleared his throat, rubbed the back of his neck. I was completely out of line earlier. She didn't make it easy for him. She didn't let him off with a smile or a joke. She just looked at him for a long second, then said, Yeah, you were. Then she opened the door and left, going home. The sun had dropped, but the sky was still blue around the edges. She walked to her car with slow, steady steps. Not tired, just centered. She didn't slam the door or grip the steering wheel like some movie ending. She sat for a moment, both hands resting quietly on her lap, a faint trace of sweat still on her forehead. Her phone buzzed once. Diego texting. You gonna make dinner or should I start the spaghetti? She smiled and typed back. On my way. The engine started. No dramatic music. No inner monologue. Just life moving forward. Because sometimes the most powerful victories are the ones you carry home in silence. The quiet after. Dinner that night was spaghetti with jar sauce and garlic bread from the freezer. Sarah didn't cook anything fancy. She didn't say much either. Just moved around the kitchen with the same quiet rhythm she carried on the mat. Diego, her 17-year-old, sat at the table with earbuds dangling around his neck. "You good, Mom?" he asked between bites. She nodded. "Yeah, how was the gym?" She paused for a second, then said, "It was all right." He studied her face. "Did you roll with anybody?" She cracked a small smile. "A few people." Diego grinned. "Bet they didn't see you coming." Sarah just shrugged, but the glint in her eye said everything. After dishes, she sat in her room for a while, not doing anything special, just letting the noise of the day fade away. She thought about Rio de Janeiro, about the mornings before sunrise, about Master Santos, who used to tell her, "You don't need to raise your voice when your presence speaks louder than words." She thought about Tyler and how some people only learn after they're flat on their backs, staring up at the truth. She thought about Coach Williams and how he looked at her differently now, not in a way that wanted something from her, but in a way that finally saw her for who she really was. She thought about Kevin and Alex and Jessica, and how maybe, just maybe, she could give something back. Not because she needed recognition, but because someone out there, some quiet person just like her, might walk into that gym one day and wonder if they belonged. And maybe if she was there, just stretching in the corner, calm and quiet, that person wouldn't walk back out the door. That mattered more than any belt color ever could. She reached under her bed, pulled out an old shoebox and opened it. Inside was her black belt, faded, frayed, tied 100 times in 100 different rooms. She held it in her hands for a minute, ran her thumb across the worn stitching. Then she closed the box again. She wasn't ready to wear it just yet, but she was ready to stop hiding from it. The next morning, she texted Coach Williams, "Hey, I'd be happy to help out on Mondays if you need an extra hand. No pressure." A few minutes later, he replied, "Absolutely. Let's talk tonight." She smiled, stood up, and looked in the mirror. Just Sarah. Blue t-shirt, hair tied back. Calm. Nothing dramatic. Nothing flashy. Just a woman who came back to something she loved and reminded a whole room that strength doesn't always need to shout. Real power isn't in the noise you make. It's in the showing up. It's in knowing who you are when nobody else does. It's in staying grounded while everyone else looks for applause. And that's what true presence looks like. So if you're ever doubted, dismissed, or told you don't belong somewhere, remember Sarah. Remember that you don't need to talk big when your truth speaks louder than words. Your actions will always be your loudest voice. And sometimes, the quietest person in the room is the most dangerous one of all.